Kyung, thank you so much. And I want to bring in now our Paul Callan and civil rights attorney Ariva Martin. Okay, good to have both of you with us. Paul, let me start with you because, I think Kyung's report is fascinating. Everybody saw it. They believe what they saw. You just heard Charles Barkley there, and we're going to hear more from him in a moment. But he brings up that point. We'd mentioned it, too. He said, look, they're African-American witnesses, and they support Darren Wilson's side. So if someone who's black supports his side, then it must be true.
Well, this case has been a trial by television, first of all. I've never seen a situation where the witnesses, some of who we thought to be the most important witnesses, had press conferences before they went before the grand jury or talked to the police. So one witness was being influenced by another witness, watching them give statements on television. And I think the whole process sort of got corrupted as a result of the intervention of the media, the overly aggressive interviewing of witnesses. Usually these things are handled by the cops and the grand jury, and you don't have witnesses being influenced this way.
Ariva, the cops, though, when you think about this, I mean, you could just discount the eyewitnesses altogether and go off things like forensics. But there were a lot of mistakes made there. The medical examiner didn't even have batteries in his camera when he went to take pictures. Darren Wilson's first interviews were not even recorded.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, Aaron. There have been so many mistakes made with respect to the investigation of this case. It just caused into question the integrity of the entire process. So I think the distrust that the community continues to voice through its protests is related to how this investigation was conducted. And we have to remember this grand jury was just trying to assess probable cause, not guilt or innocence, not beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think those of us who've read those thousands of pages see so many circumstances, so many opportunities, so much witness testimony that gave rise to probable cause that it's really difficult to understand what happened with respect to the grand jury and its decision.
So, Ariva, we'll never perhaps know exactly what played into the grand jury's decision, but one thing might have been the fact that there were eyewitness testimonies from African Americans who supported Darren Wilson's version of events. We've reported on that, and I want to play you what Charles Barkley had to say about how important that was to him.
I'm hearing things today I haven't heard at all. That even the black witnesses said this guy came 20 feet at the officer. They were fighting inside the car and 2 bullets went off. I didn't know the kid came. I mean, the blood splatter, so the guy came at the cop 20 feet.
Ariva, do you think it's possible that the race of those eyewitnesses somehow made their testimony, that the grand jury then listened to it more?
Well, we know, Aaron, that there were 3 African Americans on that grand jury, and one of the prosecuting attorneys is an African American woman. So clearly race played some role in this. Yep. There's no dispute that something happened at that car, but the witnesses' testimony vary widely once the altercation at the car ends. And one thing I found really incredible, when Darren Wilson was giving his testimony, a lot of leading questions by the prosecutors introducing this concept of justifiable homicide. Not a lot of aggressive questioning of Darren Wilson. But with some of those witnesses who were contrary to Darren were testifying, a lot of aggressive questioning.
Let's be fair about whether there was aggressive questioning. I was reading the questioning of Johnson, who was Michael Brown's friend. Key eyewitness, Dorian Johnson,
the young man who was
friend.
with Michael Brown that day. Yes.
His testimony was they met at 7 o'clock in the morning, and because they usually would start smoking weed at 7 in the morning, and they were going to go to the convenience store. No questioning about where they were from the 4 hours from 7 in the morning until 11:53 when the convenience store stick-up takes place. Softball questioning by the prosecutor
just
throughout.
Hypothetically, though, why does that matter? They did smoke pot. We know they did. It was in his system. They robbed the convenience store.
Well, it matters because it shows that the prosecutors were softball questioning everybody. They were just presenting all of the evidence to the grand jury and letting them decide. It wasn't that they were just going soft on the cop.
So, Paul, one thing
that's just not accurate.
Okay, Ariva, go ahead.
Yeah, that's just not accurate. When you read the testimony of those witnesses, many of those witnesses were questioned very aggressively. Darren Wilson was allowed to give testimony. The question of why he even pursued,
were they between 7 and 11:53 in the morning?
Wasn't even asked by the prosecutor. He had to bring that point up himself.
Paul, what about the point about Darren Wilson himself? We're always taught that the last thing you hear is the thing that sinks into your mind is the most important. So why did they have Darren Wilson testify last when Michael Brown couldn't testify at all?
For a very good reason. And if I were the prosecutor, I'd put him on last as well. Because if you're going to go after him, you wait until all of the other evidence has come in, and then you can go after him.
All the questions were softball.
Then you can go after him on contradictions that come up in the testimony. This was not a trial. This was an investigation. And you know something? In the end, there's so much reasonable doubt here. What would be accomplished if we indicted in this case? There would be an acquittal. The suffering would go on with people worrying about the case for months. I mean, does anybody seriously think that with 7 witnesses saying that he charged the car, 4 witnesses saying he was reaching into his waistband, and everybody agreeing that Michael Brown had just done a strong-arm robbery of a store, does anybody think that there's not reasonable doubt in this case? There would never be a conviction.
All right. Paul Callan, thank you very much. Ariva, thank you.